So we'll move on to our second talk now, and this is from my colleague Emma Goode from NUI Galway. And Emma's title is Danger is Everywhere, Planning for and Overcoming Future Disasters in Academic Libraries. So Emma, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ronan. Good afternoon, everyone. As the title of my paper states, danger is everywhere, even in the calm environs of our libraries. Now, to do this, I would like to start by conducting a quick experiment, and we'll need everybody to raise their hand up into the air. Come on, everybody. Excellent. Now, if you have ever worked in a library that has suffered from fire or smoke damage, lower your hand. If you have ever worked in a library that has suffered flooding, lower your hand. Now, for something that still haunts me both when I sleep and in my waking hours, anyone who has ever worked in a library that has been the victim of a cyber attack, please lower your hand. And for the stragglers, if anyone has ever worked in a library that had to close down due to a global pandemic, please lower your hand. Now, if there is one word that I never ever want to hear again as long as I live, it is this one: pivot. Here we can see Ross and Rachel from Friends trying to manoeuvre his new sofa upstairs because he did not think that paying for delivery was a sensible investment of his finances. Like Ross, we had cause to pivot many, many times during the pandemic, to the extent that it was almost impossible to know which way we were turning. In 2020, the Association of National Advertisers voted pivot as its word of the year, calling it particularly representative of a year marked by the ravages caused throughout the world by the COVID-19 pandemic and social justice issues. On March 12, 2020, we in academic libraries in the Republic of Ireland were, in very short order, issued directives to take what we could and work from home for the next 2 weeks. Now, over 2 years later, we are still in the process of readjusting to post-pandemic work life. Now, while the COVID-19 pandemic was unusual, to put it mildly, the academic library sector is not a stranger to change. Indeed, it's in a constant state of evolution. Change has been impressed upon us through, among other things, technological advances, environmental warming, funding deficits, and staff shortages. What the pandemic did do, though, was reveal to our users and our wider academic communities of what library staff are capable of when responding to the most testing of situations, what our capacity for agility is, our ability to tackle obstacles with imagination and determination, and focusing on our users' well-being through maintaining services and keeping them operational to ensure their educational and research suffered minimally. However, cheerleading ourselves for limiting the impact a global pandemic had on our patrons, while comforting and reassuring, is not the preferred position to be in. Wouldn't it be far better to be in control of situations, prepared for all eventualities, but as we now know, with weddings, concerts and foreign trips postponed, often several times, making inflexible plans is possibly one of the most foolhardy activities there is. Now, great expectations. It is so often said by university staff that if it wasn't for students, universities would be great places to work. Now, while I don't agree with this, and nor do I believe that this is an attitude held by library staff, it is true that increasingly our students and our users in general demand more from us. This could be because the free education comes with a hefty price tag and people want their money's worth, understandably, or because life moves faster now and we have to run to keep up with progress, both in terms of societal changes and progression in technology. And I say this as someone whose 10-year-old had to program my car radio. Now, what is it that users want? More than anything else, it appears to be space. It's one of our greatest assets. And this was evident during the COVID pandemic when we offered click and collect services. While our students were appreciative of our efforts to keep them in reading and research material, what they really wanted to know was when we were opening again. And this is supported by Gensler's student perspectives on the library, which suggests that students report they prefer to study in the library, and the main reason they give for this is straightforward. Libraries offer places where they can focus, and focus makes their study time more effective. With our student populations growing year on year and the supply of library seats just cannot keep up with the demand for them. And while we are all skilled professionals, we cannot create suitable library space conducive to research and study out of thin air. In relation to speed, a quick analysis of queries and requests to the library and IT desk in NUI Galway shows a decline in the number of users looking for assistance from a walk-up perspective. However, what is lacking in physical quantity is made up for through virtual queries, ticketing systems and online chats, and in the intensity and complexity of these queries. There is a need to know when their problem is going to be solved, sometimes followed by a stunned disbelief that it can't be fixed right now, or worse, when the query cannot be fixed by the team and they may need to speak to their academic or another department. Libraries provide an expanding range of services to an increasingly diverse and growing user population, often with no commensurate increase in staff and other resources. Yet we are expected to continue to resolve problems quickly. And in the main we do, because we are adaptable and we are capable of making do with less. Our ability to do this, again, while admirable, should only ever be a short-term solution to any one problem. We need to be adequately funded, we need gold standard equipment, and we need to be both properly trained on said equipment, and it ought to be acknowledged that maintenance contracts with vendors are not a nice to have, but in most cases a need to have by those who exercise fiscal responsibilities across our various campuses. Managing our users' expectations is not innate. It's a skill developed over time, and though excellence in customer service is not an accredited qualification, it should be valued as if it were. While space is what our students want, the expertise of what our staff is what they need. Now, this is a still from the 2004 film, The Day After Tomorrow, which imagines a world where the elements really are in control in a very malevolent way. Our protagonists here have found refuge in the New York Public Library from an ice storm which has chased them around the city. Sadly, with temperatures plummeting, they have to begin burning books to stay alive. I know, the horror. In many ways, in Ireland, we have not suffered greatly from the effects of climate change to date. Since the Met Office introduced red, orange and yellow alerts, we are possibly a bit more conscious of storms, though since COVID, a red weather alert no longer means a day home from work, as we're all set to work from home, so no more snow days for us. And when I say we haven't suffered greatly, it would be more correct to say that we haven't suffered greatly yet. I feel that when we imagine climate change in Ireland, we think of flooding and drought, but not necessarily the further reaching effects of climate change that will inevitably affect us here in our Goldilocks climate, which is not too hot, not too cold, but just right. It's foolhardy to think that while our libraries do not fall into the at-risk industries of agriculture or tourism, which are likely to be negatively affected by global warming, that the potential effects of climate change won't impact us. Climate change will in some way affect almost all sectors of our economy and society. It will cause events such as wildfires and hurricanes that will affect energy systems and probably increase the cost of supplying energy. Growth in peak demand from warming temperatures is also likely to increase the costs of energy production. We are already feeling the pressure of this, and along with other resource shortages, will negatively affect our communities. As previously mentioned, students want a dry, comfortable place to study with reliable Wi-Fi. The students who do manage to secure study spaces in our libraries will be disappointed if our opening hours are reduced due to shrinking economies, if the building is unheated, or if the internet connection is patchy. If this occurs, the other services provided through our libraries, academic skills, technical support, general academic advice and guidance, will also experience a drop in traffic, thus making us appear less relevant to our primary users. But this is an area that we can lead on. Not only can we make changes as individuals and reduce waste within our libraries, during the pandemic printing was virtually phased out, but we can also promote and support research in this area. Because of our position within university communities, we are aware of research activity taking place across our campuses, and we are strategically placed to make connections between projects that could benefit from each other. A complete understanding of climate change relies on bringing research from different disciplines together. Knowing what is going on is not just a question of meteorology, environmental science, or any other single field, but will require insights from many different areas. IFLA's 2018 paper on libraries and sustainability notes that libraries have roles in demonstrating sustainable buildings and practices, in promoting sustainable literacy, and in supporting sustainability research. This builds understanding of the issues among our users and helps them to learn how to change their behaviour. Now, during the pandemic, there was a lot of talk about the Great Resignation, and indeed, Chris spoke about it in her speech. Now, that workers would come to realise there was more to life than the 9 to 5, and that we would value sourdough bread, Zoom quizzes, and conversation on the pros and cons of Tiger King. Okay, maybe I'm being a little bit facetious here. But while I do think that many people did reevaluate and reprioritise the different elements in their lives, the fabled Great Resignation has not greatly impacted the public sector in Ireland. Some people may have retired earlier than initially planned. However, there is no evidence to suggest that employees handed in their notice on a wide scale or a narrow scale to live a more mindful existence. I feel that in the public sector, workers readjusted their golden handcuffs and in the main continued working in the same posts and in the same libraries. However, how we work has changed, and this is a challenge. Hybrid working sounds great in theory, but it is very difficult to roll out in practice. A case in point is the government's right to request work from home bill. Employees are given the right to request working from home, but there are 13 reasons why an employer can deny this. And after spending the best part of 18 months working entirely from home, this naturally became second nature to a lot of people, and many did not want to continue working full-time in their offices, citing better life-work balance due to less commuting time, reduced childcare costs, more time to spend on pursuits outside of work, and generally a life with fewer stresses and greater enjoyment, leading to positive mental health. And the negative side to this is that there is less engagement with other staff, especially if they are not on your team. And this separation leads to a lack of cohesion and can result in teams becoming siloed from each other. Some teams don't need to be on site as often as others, and this can lead to tensions as to why some people have to be on site and others don't. And due to the length of time that staff did spend successfully working from home, some now view hybrid working as an entitlement. It's not. It's a benefit that can be accessed by some whose roles allow it so that it doesn't impede the running of business. But this is yet to be articulated in a way that is properly understood by employees and is not felt like some sort of punishment to those affected by it. For staff who do work on site, and to be fair, everybody does, just some more than others, there are now several new user protocols in place as a result of COVID. While we have, in the main, removed masks, one-way systems and seat bookings, COVID is still present in our communities and is likely to remain with us for some time to come. It is predicted to be a seasonal affliction and is likely to necessitate the reintroduction of public health measures each winter in the coming years. So don't throw away the masks and hand sanitizer just yet. What will this mean for our colleagues, our front of house staff, our stewards and customer services teams going forward? I'm sure each institution has had to deal with non-compliant users. Anecdotally, they bizarrely seem to be from the science and nursing students. If seasonal breakouts occur, library staff and users will again be at risk. And as we have seen, the coronavirus can still affect the vaccinated and boosted. Ensuring mask wearing among non-compliant users is a thankless job, with some claiming to be exempt, yet producing no evidence to substantiate this, and then citing mental health issues when being asked to leave and accusing staff of exacerbating this through the tactics used to remove them. These tactics would be polite requests to leave as they were not following government health guidelines. Now, with the spectre of COVID lurking around for years to come, not to mention the new threat of monkeypox, with HSE officials advising those who suspect that they have contracted it to isolate for 21 days, this places another strain on our services. But again, as library customer service teams go above and beyond, it's not always recognised by our colleagues across campus, and it needs to be. Now, fake news and conspiracy theories have always existed. Most of the time, it doesn't really matter, as a flat earth advocate or a moon landing denier or a movement that holds these views will not critically affect society at large to any great extent. However, with the advent of social media and its use in promoting dangerous stances on public health, politics and minority groups, it is more difficult and more important for the unvarnished truth to be known. A core function of libraries and library staff is to ensure that users can be taught how to determine what is credible fact and what is mis, dis or malinformation. Information literacy is, to quote Sillop, the ability to think critically and make balanced judgments about any information we find and use. It empowers us as citizens to reach and express informed views and engage fully with society. Our academic skills professionals play a critical role in taking our students away from the paths of least resistance, Google, Wikipedia, YouTube, and educating them on how to source and correctly cite reliable information. Clearly, the best way for this to occur is to have these lessons embedded into all disciplines in first year. Instead, some students who paid attention during their orientation visit to the library in their first week of term are aware of the service, and some of these will reach out for help, but most don't. And due to this the information overload experienced by our students in their first weeks of university, many never take advantage of this valuable resource. Some tuned-in academics will also refer students, but again, the vast majority don't, and this is very concerning. If fewer students come into our library to use our services, our university management teams will conclude that we are in decline and do not require financial support, further exacerbating an underfunded service to the detriment of our students' education success. There really is no escape. It has happened to us in NUIG, and it is inevitable that it will happen to you at some point in the future, and it will keep happening. As quickly as newer, stronger, better methods of cybersecurity are being devised and implemented, the challenge to infiltrate firewalls is just that, a challenge. And there are people out there, either individuals or groups, who do this just to see if they can. And then, of course, there are the others who do this to extort money from the organisations they attack. I can say without any doubt that the disruption caused by COVID pales into comparison by the whole-scale devastation caused by the cyber attack in NUI Galway. We are still not 100% fully back to where we were prior to the attack, which took place at the end of September last year, a few weeks into term. From a library perspective, we suffered no internet. Temporary routers were purchased to get around this, but until then, staff were using hotspots on their phone to connect to the internet. This meant no email, no printing, no access to our library management system, a workaround had to be sought. No access to our repositories, again, another workaround. No self-check machines. First-year students who had changed courses within the first weeks of term were not registered on Blackboard. Staff and student feeds that are maintained in our library management system were not updated. And our e-resources, which had grown substantially during COVID, were inaccessible. This caused huge distress to our students. Our service desk is an integrated library and IT desk, and our ticketing system went down. Students and staff logged multiple tickets when they didn't get a response, clogging up the system, which caused more problems when we came back online. The library and IT team not only had to employ their excellent customer service skills in dealing with the issues that landed in front of them, but on occasion were practically counselling students who were highly stressed and in tears about their work, as some academics did not give extensions to assignments, even though students couldn't access the necessary materials to complete them. One of the most frustrating aspects of this was as services were brought up and services returned, they were sometimes without warning dropped again, and an intermittent service is in some ways worse than no service. And while I started saying that it's inevitable that cyber attacks will happen, prioritising cybersecurity and appropriately funding it can limit the number of attacks and the success of such an attack. Now, when I spoke to friends and family, about this topic, danger in libraries, I was greeted with laughter initially, and then some useless suggestions, such as paper cuts, ghosts, located at the entrance to the hellmouth. The general assumption is that libraries are sanctuaries for the mind and soul, and honestly the last place that could face danger. As we have seen, those of us working in libraries are all too aware of the threats facing this sector. The greatest danger of all is how to maintain relevance as an essential component of academic success. We are not a nice to have, an artefact to browse through when one would like a respite from the chaos of campus life. We are a must-have and a must-support better service on our respective campuses. Too much emphasis is given currently to the notion that universities should be run like a business, and schools and departments not capable of generating their own funds are somehow lesser or worse, should be phased out for not being economical or are a drain on university resources. This has been seen across the world in the UK, Australia and the US, especially holding in the humanities, essentially departments that house subjects that teach critical thinking, and they are dismantled bit by bit. The ethos of libraries is not to generate funding. Instead, its focus is to provide services that assist and guide students and researchers through the vast knowledge available to them. There is a juxtaposition between the appearance and reality of the academic library sector. On the one hand, we are usually located centrally on campus. We provide space and services designed to enhance students' academic outcomes, and library staff go over and above the remit of their job descriptions to help our users, whatever the query. On the other hand, libraries are in some way the wallpaper of our institutions. We would be immediately missed if we were not there. However, little thought is given to our continued development because we've just always been. And while we know that we are so much more than repositories of books, and our users and hopefully our respective communities don't view us as such, it is a dangerous trope. but the only people who can correct that is ourselves. We need to make more noise about our successes, owning them and capitalising on them to remind those with budgetary responsibilities of the role we play in student retention and that the services we provide impact our students' academic success. Just because we do not generate income or have the ability to attract substantial amounts of external funding does not mean that we are not the vital beating heart of our campuses. It is essential that our university management teams do not behave like Ross Geller from Friends, and that they recognise the need to properly support our libraries, enabling us to carry out our jobs. Otherwise, our libraries could become like his couch. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Emma, for that, for highlighting an awful lot of professional existential crises threatening us all.